That's the $64 question, because the returns on equity, and particularly tangible equity, as the gentleman mentioned, and particularly tangible equity in the banking sector even, those returns have hit numbers that are unprecedented. And then the question is, if they're unprecedented, are they unsustainable? Charlie and I would probably think that we would certainly prefer, we would not base our actions on the premise that they are sustainable. 20% plus returns on tangible equity, or on book equity, and much higher returns on tangible equity. In the banking field, you have a number of enterprises that on tangible equity are getting up close to the 30% range. Now, can a system where the GDP in real terms is growing maybe 3%, where in nominal terms it grows 4 to 5%, can businesses consistently earn 20% on equity? They certainly can't if they retain most of their earnings, because you would have corporate profits rising as a percentage of GDP to the point that would get ludicrous. So under those conditions, you'd either have to have huge payouts, either by repurchases of shares or by dividends or by takeovers, actually, that would keep the level of capital reasonably consistent among industry, or because you couldn't sustain, let's just say every company retained all of its earnings and they earned 20% on equity. You could not have corporate profits growing at 20% as a part of the economy year after year. This has been a better world than we foresaw in terms of returns, and so we've been wrong before, and we're not making a prediction now, but we would not want to buy things on the basis that these returns would be sustained. We told you last year, if these returns are sustained and interest rates stayed at these levels or fell lower, that stock prices are in aggregate are justified, and we still believe that. But those are two big ifs, and the particularly big if, in my view, is the one about returns on equity and on tangible assets. It certainly goes against classic economic theory to believe that they can be sustained. Charlie, how do you feel about it?
Well, I think a lot of the increase in return on equity has been caused by the increasing popularity of Jack Welch's idea that you can't be a leader in a line of business, get out of it. And as you get fewer people in the business, why returns on equity can go up. Then it's gotten way more popular to buy in shares, even at very high prices per share. And if you keep the equity low enough by buying shares back, why, you could make return on equity whatever you want. We've had, to some extent, a slow revolution in corporate attitudes. And but Warren is right. You can't have massive accumulations of earnings that are retained and keep earning these rates of return on them.
An interesting question is to think about it. If you had 500 Jack Welches and they were running the Fortune cloned, and they were running all of the Fortune 500 companies, would returns on equity for American business be higher or lower than they are presently? I mean, if you have 500 sensational competitors, they can all be rational, but that doesn't, and they will be, and they'll be smart, and they'll keep trying to do all the right things. But there's a self-neutralizing effect. It's like having 500 expert chess players or 500 expert bridge players. You still have a lot of losers if they get together and play in a tournament. So it's not at all clear that if all American management were dramatically better, leaving out the competition against foreign enterprises, that returns on equity would be a lot better. They might very well drive things down. That's what, to some extent, can easily happen in securities markets. It's way better to be in securities markets if you have 100 IQ and everybody else operating has an 80 than if you have 140 and all the rest of them also have 140. So it's the secret of life is weak competition. Somebody said, how do you beat Bobby Fischer, and you play him any game except chess. Well, that's how you beat Jack Welch. You play him any game except business. Oh, he's a very good golfer, I want to point out. He shot a 69 a few months ago, and I saw him at a very tough course. Jack manages to play 70 or 80 rounds of golf a year and come in subpar occasionally while still doing what he does at GE. He's a great manager. But 500 Jack Welches, I'm not at all sure would make stocks more valuable in this country. Zone 1.